Well, guys, you know what time this is. This is your annual year in review. This is your WWE 2020 year in review. And I have to say that this year sucked. It did. Now, I don't think it sucked nearly as bad as last year. I will give the company some leniency because of what happened later in the year. There are also some good moments happening in 2020. But overall, the city year was pretty bad. So let's dive into the year WWE in 2020. See what they did right, what they did wrong, things they can improve on. So we start off the build towards the Royal Rumble. We have Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman coming out. They're going to announce who will Brock Lesnar face at the Royal Rumble. It's a big question. The company wasn't really building up anyone to go up against Lesnar. And the promo that Paul Heyman cut was pretty good. He stated that no one is ready for Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble. No one deserves to face him. And so therefore Brock Lesnar will enter the Royal Rumble match. So it's the first time in 4 years that the WWE champion will be in the Royal Rumble match at the number one position. This was intriguing. At a live event, you had Andrade win the United States Championship off of Rey Mysterio. So for Andrade, he's had a mixed bag career in the WWE. 2018, he was fantastic. He was in matches with Rey Mysterio, AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan, Jeff Hardy. In 2019, all he did was go up against mid-carders, and he needed help to beat them. So, and he also went 50-50 for Rey Mysterio in 2019. I didn't really care for that, but hopefully this United States Championship win can somehow rejuvenate him. On the Raw side, you had Charlotte Flair announce her entrance into the Royal Rumble. And as soon as he announced that she was going to be in the Rumble, I knew she was going to win it right away. I knew she was going to win. So we're saying, oh, it's going to be Shayna Baszler, oh, it's going to be Bianca Belair, or it's going to be Sasha Banks. No, it's going to be Charlotte. She was the runner-up in last year's Royal Rumble. Why would she be the runner-up in this year's Royal Rumble? She's going to win. I was fine with that. Some people weren't, but I've grown to like Charlotte over the years. Then you had a feud over the Raw Women's Championship between Becky Lynch and Asuka. I couldn't really care much for this one. Becky, she's all right, but to me, she should have lost her women's title to Sasha Banks. Her title reign should not have been this long. And you have Asuka, who's already a champion, women's tag team champion, going against Becky Lynch, because there's not really a story to this match. The reason why they're facing each other was because of what happened at Tables, Ladders, and Chairs a month prior, and their last meeting at the Royal Rumble 1 year ago. You had Asuka make Becky Lynch tap out, and Becky won the Rumble the previous night. Whatever. On the SmackDown side, after Survivor Series, had like Lacey Evans confront Bayley and Sasha Banks. That would lead to a feud between Lacey Evans and Sasha Banks. They would even include Lacey Evans' daughter in the situation, which was pretty cool to see. I like when things get personal. Bring in realism to wrestling. It's very rare these days. It kind of makes Sasha Banks more of a heel than just being Bayley's lapdog. And that got turned into a feud with Bayley, so Lacey Evans and Bayley were going to feud with one another at the Royal Rumble. Baron Corbin, Roman Reigns, they were feuding since Tables, Ladders, and Chairs. Yet Baron Corbin beat Roman Reigns on an episode of SmackDown, so their feud is continuing toward the Royal Rumble. It will be a Falls Count Anywhere match. And you had Daniel Bryan and Bray Wyatt. They continued their feud to the Royal Rumble. Their last match was at Survivor Series. The Fiend won. Daniel Bryan's back. He cut his hair. And he challenged The Fiend to a strap match at the Royal Rumble. And a few weeks later, he had Kane show up. He was hyping the Rumble, saying it was his favorite event ever. And he had The Fiend. He was there who did a stare down with Kane, which looked pretty cool. And he had Daniel Bryan attack The Fiend from behind. And on the go-home show, you had a contract signing towards the Royal Rumble. So the first month of the year, I thought it was fantastic. So they built towards the Rumble. They kind of were getting like the WrestleMania plans together. They were building up new stars. There's unpredictability. So the first month is all right. The Royal Rumble. You had Sheamus, Chad Gable. You had Andrade retain his United States Championship against Humberto Carrillo. I was fine with that. He won on his own instead of cheating to win against mid-carders. You had Roman Reigns defeat Baron Corbin. This match was physical. Even the spot where Roman Reigns speared him right on top of the dugout to win. You had the Women's Rumble match. We saw some surprise appearances of Beth Phoenix, Kelly Kelly, and Santino Marella in the Rumble. And the Royal Rumble would end by Charlotte Flair and Shayna Baszler being the final two. And Charlotte Flair would be the one to win. Now, a lot of people were complaining about Charlotte Flair winning. I wasn't. I knew she was going to win. Like I said, she was the runner-up in the 2019 Royal Rumble. Why would she lose again in the 2020 Royal Rumble? Some were saying that Shayna Baszler should have won. Yeah, maybe she should have, but dude, she was eliminated like an idiot. All she had to do is throw Charlotte Flair's legs over the top rope, but no. She let Charlotte Flair use her legs to grab her by the head and toss Shayna Baszler over the rope. Charlotte Flair wins. She's going to WrestleMania. I knew it. I predicted it. I called it. I'm fine with it. Not to be disappointed with something that I saw coming. Yet Bayley defeat Lacey Evans. Yet Becky Lynch defeat Asuka. Yet The Fiend defeat Daniel Bryan. Then you got the men's Royal Rumble match. You got Brock Lesnar coming out as number one. And he had some interesting stare downs. He had an interesting stare down to Keith Lee. They had a good exchange. Then we saw, Kofi Kingston coming out, Ricochet coming out, all getting their revenge on Brock Lesnar. We had MVP show up in the Royal Rumble and John Morrison, Brock Lesnar's college roommate Shelton Benjamin. So the first half of the Royal Rumble with Brock in it was really good. It was seeing all the interactions and relationships that Brock Lesnar had. I think it was number 15. About halfway into the Royal Rumble, you had Ricochet blow Lesnar. Out comes Drew McIntyre against Lesnar. Claymore over the top rope. Lesnar's eliminated. And the crowd just going nuts. And at the end of the Rumble, number 27, you had Edge make his shocking return. Well, not really shocking. It was rumored, but, the arena went nuts. He made his return to wrestling after 9 years of being out of action. Edge was eliminated by Roman Reigns, and then Roman Reigns, Drew McIntyre were the final two in the Rumble. Drew McIntyre eliminated Roman Reigns. And this Royal Rumble was pretty good. They started off the way they needed to build towards WrestleMania. So the first month, I thought it was awesome. But the next few months after this, oh boy. Let's go into February. So we start off with Edge Appreciation Night. Edge coming out. He's thanking the fans. Says he has grit. He said that ever since he got injured, he had an idea of coming back. So then you have Randy Orton come out and interrupt him. Randy Orton, he wanted to reform Rated RKO. But before Edge had an answer, Randy Orton all of a sudden gives Edge an RKO right out of nowhere and gives him a concerto to the head. Now, I kind of expected this, but the fans, man, they did not. They were booing Randy Orton. They were having their hands cover their face. They were crying. This was awesome, man. Randy Orton, he is a national treasure. He is on point. He is great to listen to. He's great to watch. Then you have Seth Rollins. He turned heel last year. He was feuding with Kevin Owens. And he started off the new year by creating a new stable, which would be known as the Greater Good. We see Buddy Murphy and the Office of Pain right next to him. So we're seeing a new faction for him. I thought that was all right. And you had Seth and Murphy. They took the tag team titles off of the Viking Raiders. Great decision there. You're getting Buddy Murphy some exposure. You gave him a championship victory. I kind of like to see an AOP versus the Viking Raiders, but they opted to go with Seth and Murphy, which I was fine with that. But my only question with this faction was, who is going to benefit from the Greater Good? Is it going to be Murphy? Is it going to be AOP or just Seth Rollins? That was my only question. Then you had a triple threat match a couple weeks later to determine who will face Brock Lesnar for the title at Super Showdown. It was Seth Rollins versus Lashley versus Ricochet. Now, I was really hoping my boy Lashley would win, but they opted to go with Ricochet, which I just couldn't really care for, man. Ricochet's buried. You job him out to AJ Styles. You had him job out to Andrade. This guy was just completely useless. But I did like the story he had with Lesnar. That was all right. Just couldn't care for it. I get Ricochet get low blood by Lesnar on the go-home show before the Royal Rumble. Then at the Rumble, Ricochet gets payback by low-blowing Lesnar. So I guess that will set up a title match at Super Showdown. There wasn't really much of a story there. It's just a battle of the low blows, who low-blowed who. It was okay, but I would prefer Lashley to get a super match, a super fight between the two. That would have been much better. And yet Roman Reigns, Baron Corbin, they continued their feud. Had like a dog food match. Like Baron Corbin dumped dog food all over Roman Reigns. That set up another match between the two. Roman Reigns won. So they took a bucket of dog food and they poured it all over. It's really disgusting. Well, I thought the feud was over at that point, but no. Baron Corbin come out the next week and he challenged Roman Reigns to a steel cage match at Super Showdown. So we're getting one more match between the two. As far as the feud between Roman Reigns and Baron Corbin goes, it was all right, but man, it just went for way too long. Just a little bit repetitive. Then you got an announcement that Goldberg was coming back. Great. Bill Goldberg coming back. Who's he going up against at Saudi Arabia? I thought it'd be Baron Corbin. I thought that'd be the perfect opponent. Now, Brian Alvarez and Dave Meltzer, they actually predicted this correctly. They said that The Fiend would take on Goldberg. I necessarily didn't really believe them because that's just way out of there, but that's what happened. Goldberg was deciding who was next. He said Brock Lesnar had his hands full, so we can't go after him. But he didn't have his rematch with the Universal Champion. All of a sudden, Bray Wyatt is in the Firefly Funhouse and interrupted Goldberg. He says, hey, Bill, you're not going to take the Universal Championship off the Fiend. It'll be a cold day in hell before you do that. Goldberg says, I'm not going to play your games. Bray Wyatt, you're next. So next week, you have Hulk Hogan who's being interviewed. The NWO were set to go into the Hall of Fame. Hulk Hogan was talking about the differences between The Fiend and Goldberg. He predicted that Goldberg would beat The Fiend. Then you had Bray Wyatt and Hogan. And this was a pretty good exchange of words between Hogan and The Fiend, or Bray Wyatt. First he's funny, he's comical, and then he turns serious. I think he even challenged Hogan to a fight. Hogan, he stormed out of the room saying he'll see everybody in Tampa. Then the go home show, you had Goldberg show up live in the arena. The Fiend was there, and Goldberg turned around and he spared the Fiend. As far as the bill goes in the Super Showdown, there's just a lot of stuff that I couldn't care for. The only stuff that's on this PowerPoint was stuff that I had some interest in. February, yeah, this is where the product kind of began to deteriorate. Super Showdown. You have to get the OC, defeat the Viking Raiders. You have, I think, Garza. And Garza defeated Humberto. You have John Morrison and The Miz defeat the New Day to become the new SmackDown Tag Team Champions. And right decision there. Get Mansoor defeat Dolph Ziggler. Seth Rollins and Buddy Murphy, they retained their tag team titles over the Street Profits. Bayley defeat Naomi for the SmackDown Women's title. Then you had the Tawake Trophy Gauntlet. You had like R-Truth, Lashley, Andrade, Rey Mysterio. They were all in there. AJ Styles was in there. And then all of a sudden, you had AJ. He was the final man in the gauntlet. He was waiting for Rey Mysterio to come out. Rey Mysterio got attacked in the back. So they were going to find a replacement for Rey Mysterio, which ended up being The Undertaker. Makes his return. Tombstone to AJ Styles. He pins AJ Styles, so The Undertaker wins the gauntlet. Then you had Brock Lesnar and Ricochet. Brock Lesnar just destroyed Ricochet in like 90 seconds. And the fans are saying that Brock Lesnar was going to squash Ricochet. And Ricochet on Twitter was attacking the fans, saying like, "Oh no, I've beaten bigger men before, just like Lesnar. It's gonna be a fight. I'm not gonna get buried, but you did." I hate Ricochet, man, because this guy is a complete jobber, and he refuses to accept it. He refuses to follow his release and just go. He likes to kiss up to Vince McMahon and just do whatever Vince tells him to do, because he's just happy to be there. Roman Reigns beat Baron Corbin inside a steel cage. You get the main event, Goldberg versus The Fiend. Now, I thought The Fiend was going to win this match. I predicted it. I thought it'd be 5 minutes. Goldberg does spears, jackhammers. The Fiend does a mandible claw. Match is over. I knew there was some chance of Goldberg winning, but I didn't think they'd really go with it. But they did. Goldberg beats The Fiend. Now, all the smarks on the internet were complaining, part-timers champion, Goldberg, this and that. You know what? Goldberg won. I laughed. To me, this was funny. I was in favor of this decision. Why? First of all, Bray Wyatt's already buried. To be fair, none of the fans ever cared about Bray Wyatt. So he puts a mask on, all of a sudden now people care about him. I mean, come on. Plus, Goldberg's a big name. He's a draw. He brings in ratings. So instead of a match between Goldberg and Roman Reigns, spear versus spear, it's box office. Well, ever since Roman Reigns and Goldberg double speared Braun Strowman 2016, this has been a match that's been 4 years into the making. How could anyone not want to see this match? It's a match that must happen. It needs to happen. Representative saying, well, they should defeat Cena for a Universal title. That's a terrible idea. Why? Because if Cena wins, he becomes a 17-time world champion. Bray Wyatt not only lost once to Cena at WrestleMania, but he lost to Cena twice. And that would be it for Bray Wyatt. Goldberg winning here, to be honest, I have to state it was the correct decision. Bill Goldberg, I mean, what's he going to do? He paid $2 million. He has a kid at home watching the WWE. He's going to get a spot at WrestleMania. You want to say no to that stuff? Whatever. Whatever. Goldberg winning? Fantastic. I'm happy for him. Then we get to the road to the Elimination Chamber. And just like February, man, this month was not that good at all. So yeah, Shayna Baszler make her official main roster debut. She bit Becky Lynch in the neck. She looked like a vampire, blood dripping out of the mouth. And this was a great visual. But however, like an hour and a half later into the show, Becky Lynch hijack an ambulance. They'll drive to the arena. And she cuts a promo saying what Shayna Baszler did was nothing but a paper cut, which I found that the render Shayna Baszler's efforts useless. Like Shayna Baszler bit a huge chunk out of Becky Lynch's neck. Like Becky should have been incapacitated off TV for a month. No, she comes back an hour and a half later and shakes off the whole neck bite. What's the point of debuting Shayna Baszler? You had to lose the Rumble, and then you have her bite attack on Becky Lynch mean nothing. Great. Not only that, you have Becky Lynch come out every week wearing these ridiculous outfits. It's like you're doing your Conor McGregor impression. It was just awful. Becky Lynch, I like her charisma and all, but over these past several months, man, she's just become cringe. If Randy Orton comes out after attacking Edge, and he couldn't really give an explanation for why he attacked Edge. I like that. Not every heel has to explain things right away. But then you have Matt Hardy coming out, saying that him and Edge have been on similar paths. Matt Hardy, too, has grit. And right before he was able to do anything to Randy Orton attacks Matt Hardy with a steel chair and he gives him an RKO. And he did this for about a month. It's pretty cool to see Orton just destroying Matt Hardy. Then you have AJ Styles comes out and he challenges The Undertaker to a match at WrestleMania. He even mentions The Undertaker's wife, Michelle McCool, which is pretty cool. Not a lot of people have talked about Michelle McCool. It's been years since The Undertaker did his big evil gimmick in the 2000s. It's been a while. They called Undertaker an old man. He can't even walk. That was pretty cool. Then you have Charlotte Flair come out. She was announcing who was she going to face at WrestleMania. She said that she has already been Raw Women's Champion. She's already been SmackDown Women's Champion. Then all of a sudden you have the NXT Women's Champion, Rhea Ripley, come out and challenge Charlotte Flair to WrestleMania. And I like the idea. You're getting NXT some exposure on a huge show at WrestleMania. I think that's what the NXT platform really needs, some more exposure. Then on Raw, you had the Street Profits versus Buddy Murphy and Seth Rollins. This was like a now or never tag team title match. If the Street Profits don't win here, they'll never get another shot at the tag team titles. So what happens? Well, in typical fashion, the Street Profits beat Rollins and Murphy. They are new tag team champions. And I'll give them a chance. I wasn't really too keen on them. All they're doing was these cringe backstage recaps. It's just awful. But They won here, and I'll support them. Then you have John Cena come out. And he's talking about how talk about WrestleMania, how big of the show is, how important it is. Then he says that WrestleMania should probably go on without it. WrestleMania doesn't need John Cena. Then all of a sudden, you have the Fiend come out. He sneaks behind Cena and points at the WrestleMania sign. John Cena accepts the match with the Fiend. It'll be Bray Wyatt versus John Cena 2 at WrestleMania. Interesting. Kind of interesting. You have Roman Reigns stare down with Goldberg, and this was a pretty cool sight to see. Then you have Braun Strowman. He did like a feud of Sami Zayn. At first, he beat Shinsuke Nakamura to win the Intercontinental title. Then he feuds with Sami Zayn going into Elimination Chamber. I didn't really care much about this. Braun is just a bumbling buffoon. Sammy's all right. Then you have Otis. He falls in love with Mandy Rose. And they do this romance angle. So there comes to a scene where Otis invites Mandy Rose out to a dinner date. And when the dinner date happens, Otis gets a text message saying that Mandy Rose will be late to the restaurant. So Otis decides to wait instead of heading out early. But what Otis doesn't know is that someone stole Mandy's phone and texted Otis the incorrect message on purpose. So when Otis arrives to the restaurant, he sees Mandy there. And Mandy's having a dinner date with Dolph Ziggler. Mandy's already at the restaurant, so he's waiting for Otis to come to the door. He didn't, so Dolph was there to comfort her. And once Otis sees Dolph and Mandy eating dinner together, he freaks out. He's all disappointed. He's all heartbroken. You know what? I like this. This gives Otis some, character development. It makes him more just a big man. He's a big man, but he also has emotion to him. But this feud was all right. As far as February goes, this was just not a good month. The only thing I liked was AJ Styles, Orton, Cena the Fiend, Goldberg and Roman, Otis, Street Profits, but whole Becky Lynch stuff and Braun Strowman, everything else I just couldn't really care for. So right away we were going in towards another terrible build towards WrestleMania. Then we get to the Elimination Chamber. You had Daniel Bryan defeat Drew Gulak. Then you had Andrade. I think he beat Humberto. Then you had Viking Raiders. They won their match. I think they beat Hawkins and Ryder. Then you have Sami Zayn defeat Braun Strowman. He wins the Intercontinental title. I support that decision, but makes Braun look like an idiot. And he just won the title like a few months ago. And I just lost to the Sami Zayn. Street Profits, they retained their tag team titles. Then we had the Elimination Chamber matches as for the SmackDown tag team titles. There was a spot where Otis ran through the Elimination Chamber pod because Dolph Ziggler was on the outside of the ring. That was a cool sight to see. You had The Miz and Morrison retain their tag team titles. They beat like the Usos, they as the final competitors in the ring. And I was proud to see Miz and Morrison still be champions. I thought the titles would exchange hands, but they didn't. You had AJ Styles and Aleister Black. Now, this was a pretty cool match. This is what a match Aleister Black needed. He needed legitimate competition instead of being in a dark room for a year and a half and only fighting jobbers. The Undertaker was there, distracts AJ Styles. Takes out Gallows and Anderson, chokeslams AJ Styles. Aleister Black does the Black Mass. Aleister Black wins. Then you have the Women's Elimination Chamber match main event of the show. Shayna Baszler wins by last eliminating Asuka. Right decision there. Because if Shayna Baszler didn't, I would really be questioning the company at this point. And of course she had to win. I didn't really care about the build going into this chamber match. The rest of the women in there besides Shayna and Asuka were just pretty much jobbers. You got Liv Morgan, Sarah Logan, Ruby Riott, Natalia. Those people in there really had no chance of winning. So then following the Elimination Chamber, you have Randy Orton now giving his explanation why he attacked Edge. He said he did when Edge coming back and injuring his neck again. He didn't want to see Edge get hurt again, so he had to retire Edge for him. And then Beth Phoenix come out. She slapped Randy Orton, and then Randy Orton gives Beth Phoenix the RKO. And that was awesome. Randy Orton so far has been the MVP. Next week, Edge comes out. He yells out for Randy Orton. Then MVP comes out, interrupts Edge. And he says something about Edge's kids, Beth Phoenix, and Edge just gives MVP at Randy Orton's RKO. Orton comes out, tries to attack Edge. Edge was able to fight off Randy Orton. Then we have Lesnar coming out. We have Paul Heyman address Lesnar's WrestleMania opponent, Drew McIntyre. Heyman was talking about Lesnar's dominance in the championship landscape. He was saying that McIntyre, he said he respects Drew McIntyre. McIntyre's good, but he's not going to get the job done. But then out of nowhere, Drew McIntyre comes along and claymores Lesnar in the ring. Paul Heyman's in shock. Then next week later, you have Drew McIntyre give Brock Lesnar a claymore on the ramp. Just lays him out. He holds the title up in the air. Danger is giving McIntyre this big pop. So as far as the story goes between those two, I think it's brilliant. You know, Brock and Orton, MVP so far. But then all of a sudden, the world as we knew it changed. The COVID-19 pandemic began. It was announced that WrestleMania would be relocating from Raymond James Center to the Performance Center without spectators. And some were saying, how come WWE didn't postpone WrestleMania? Why wasn't it canceled? Every other sports league was shutting down. Vince McMahon believes that the show must go on. I respect that. I don't mind postponing WrestleMania to a couple of weeks, but it really wouldn't have mattered. They would have to put in the PC anyway. I'm saying that there was a Madison Square Garden show going on in June. The pandemic was over by the summer, but it didn't. So they had no choice but to put these shows in the PC. The first SmackDown show at the PC, I thought it was pretty good. Cena versus Bray Wyatt. Cena and Bray Wyatt beginning their build. Then you have Cena, he kind of turned heel. He said that Bray Wyatt's no other than Husky Harris, and the match was his fault for why Bray Wyatt's career has turned into what it is. And yet Bray Wyatt, blaming Cena, playing mind games with him, even had Cena going to the Firefly Funhouse. So the build between these two is pretty cool. It was probably better than their feud at WrestleMania 30. Then you had Michael Cole and Triple H on commentary. Triple H was a gem at commentary. It's nice to see him there. Then you had Roman Reigns and Bill Goldberg. They did a contract signing. It was all right, but very underwhelming. Like Michael Cole asked Roman Reigns a question like, Roman, some fans don't believe that you should be in the main event of WrestleMania again. Why do you believe that? Roman Reigns said, Well, I made an event in a small town a few weeks ago. Now since I could do that, I can now main event WrestleMania. And Roman Reigns really could have said a lot at Bill Goldberg. They could have really sold the match based on spear versus spear. Roman Reigns could have said that he'd beat The Undertaker, something that Goldberg could never do. Roman Reigns could say that he's main evented WrestleMania 4 years in a row. There's something that Bill Goldberg has never done. And he could have had Bill Goldberg fire shots at Lesnar, fire shots at Roman Reigns too. Like he's beating guys like Hogan and Sting and Lesnar. What has Roman done that has been equal to that? As far as SmackDown's first empty arena PC show, I thought it was all right. The Raw side, not so much. Edge's promo coming out dressing Randy Orton, that was okay. The Undertaker's contract signing with AJ Styles, that was pretty good. Yeah, Austin 316 Day took place after the SmackDown. He had Stone Cold there. He stunned the Byron Saxton. He also stunned the Street Profits. Him and Becky Lynch did like a toast together. That was all right, but that's what I liked from the Raw side. Stone Cold, Taker, and Edge, the part-timers. Everything else on there sucked. A bunch of matches on there that didn't matter. Like another Rey Mysterio Andrade match that I didn't care for. Then you had these WWE showed like previous WrestleMania matches between segments, full-length matches, which I didn't really care for that either. If they would have shown the highlights in like 3 or 4 minutes, that would have been okay. But showing the full 20-minute match, or showing the full Royal Rumble match from a few months ago, that just wasn't needed. You could really tell her that WWE just gave up. Yeah, the talent may have been reluctant in going to work, but you should have told them, hey, we're doing WrestleMania regardless of what happens. If you're going to do WrestleMania in the PC, according to plan, you have to commit to doing WrestleMania, Bill. You can't just give up, bring back the part-timers, resting on their laurels, or just relying on old WrestleMania clips to do the job. But no, you have to produce WrestleMania content. And to me, they failed here. The only thing that I did like about the PC shows were the promos. They were pretty good. Like Undertaker's promo addressing AJ Styles. Said that AJ Styles will not survive in Undertaker's era. And Undertaker said he has many more matches behind him than he does in front of him. Edge addressing Randy Orton. Yet Randy Orton addressed one more promo to Edge. Yet Becky Lynch, the final leg of WrestleMania, she was a little bit more serious. Shayna Baszler doing an interview with Charlie Caruso. You have Becky Lynch sneak up behind her and attack her with a chair. That was a pretty cool scene, but I just kind of really care about their feud. Becky Lynch wearing ridiculous outfits, overlooking Shayna Baszler, writing her off as a nobody. I didn't really like that. Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins, they feuded towards WrestleMania. They feuded for months, and they had an excellent promo. Seth Rollins was saying that he has success on the grandest stage, unlike Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens says that WrestleMania is in the facility where he was brought into and where he did his training, unlike Seth Rollins. You have Brock Lesnar, Paul Heyman, they were out there, cutting another good promo for Drew McIntyre. Yeah. The promos here were great. As far as the entire WrestleMania build, it was very underwhelming. It felt unfinished. And I really wish they would have postponed the show about a couple weeks and finished more of the stories. Like Edge and Orton could have had one more face-to-face confrontation. Styles and The Undertaker had one more face-to-face confrontation. Becky Lynch, Shayna Baszler, that feud needed way more time. The only feuds I thought were perfect were Cena and The Fiend, Lesnar and McIntyre, and Charlotte Flair, Rhea Ripley, but everything else kind of needed more time, especially Roman and Goldberg too. Like those two feeling in a WrestleMania was just underwhelming. So WrestleMania this year, it was a two-part event. And Cesaro defeated Drew Gulak, and Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross defeat the Kabuki Warriors, Asuka and Kairi Sane. They went back there attacking titles. And Elias defeat Baron Corbin. And then you have Becky Lynch defeat Shayna Baszler. Becky Lynch retains her women's championship, and I had a feeling Becky would win. The match was like the fourth match on the show. So I knew they weren't going to do a major title change this early. Because there's no fans there, so you can't really get heat on Shayna. So they just gave it to Becky. And to me, Shayna Baszler, she should have won here, if not the Royal Rumble. I mean, this is her second major match that she has failed to win. Right now, she's 1 for 2. She won the Chamber, but lost the Rumble, lost the WrestleMania. Things are not looking good for Shayna Baszler. I know how WWE books talent more than anybody. This is not going to go well for her later on. And Sami Zayn get an upset victory over Daniel Bryan. It's pretty shocking. I couldn't really care about this, though. To me, I'm glad that Sami won, but he should have been the Intercontinental Champion 4 years ago, WrestleMania 32, instead of waiting all this time to give him a championship. And then we had a triple threat ladder match for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. This was a singles triple threat match. The Usos, one of the Usos pulled out. Same thing with The Miz because of COVID concerns. It just became a standard triple threat match. John Morrison won. So Miz and Morrison retained the tag titles here. Fantastic decision. And you have Braun Strowman defeat Bill Goldberg. He wins the Universal title. I couldn't really care about this one. Braun should have been a world champion years ago, but for like 3 years, this guy was just a bumbling buffoon, an idiot. Everywhere he looked, he was made into an idiot. So I could not care about this one. Owens and Rollins, their match was terrific. Kevin Owens jumped off the WrestleMania sign, but Kevin Owens defeats Seth Rollins, and then you had the Boneyard match. It was basically a buried alive match, but off location. And you had Undertaker defeat AJ Styles by burying AJ Styles alive. This match was good. It was long. It was dark. It told a lot of story. This match had a lot of time to it. Now, I'm not going to say this was the best match that Undertaker, AJ, or WWE has done. I'm not going to go that far, but this match was pretty cool. As far as night one goes, I might rate it a 7 out of 10. The only issues I had here were Braun winning and Becky winning. I would have kept the title on Goldberg, and I've had Shayna Baszler win the title here. WrestleMania Part 2. It's Liv Morgan defeat Natalya, and Aleister Black defeat Bobby Lashley, and Otis defeat Dolph Ziggler. Yet the Street Profits defeated Garza and Austin Theory. You had a fatal 5-way match for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Lacey Evans was involved. Bayley, Sasha Banks, Tamina, Naomi. Bayley was able to walk out as champion. And then you had Charlotte Flair defeat Rhea Ripley. Charlotte Flair's new NXT champion. Now, I would have had Rhea Ripley win. You have Rhea Ripley win, you've built a new star. Instead of giving the title right back to Charlotte, thinks she's a draw. She's bringing viewers to NXT. Did I have a problem with this match? No, I knew Charlotte was going to win. I predicted this a while back when she announced her entrance into the Rumble. But people were saying, oh, they should do Charlotte Flair versus Bianca Belair WrestleMania World Triple Threat. No, because Charlotte Flair is going to win regardless of what happens. You have her pin Bianca Belair at WrestleMania. uh, we have a potential new star, Bianca. If she lost to Charlotte, that star would have been shot down from the sky. Oh, unlike Rhea Ripley, she can afford a loss here, but it does hurt her. Charlotte wins. I didn't have a problem with it, but if I were booking things, I would give Rhea Ripley. I would have Rhea Ripley still remain champion. Then you have the Firefly Funhouse between John Cena and The Fiend, and this match was pretty cool. It wasn't really a match, though. Basically, it was just a story throughout Bray Wyatt and John Cena in the WWE's career. I went back to Cena doing the whole Dr. Thugonomics thing back in 02, 04. The story of the Monday Night Wars. The story of Bray Wyatt back at WrestleMania 30. At WrestleMania 30 at Cena, he refused to hit Bray Wyatt in the head of the chair. He gave Bray Wyatt an attitude adjustment and won. This match, he did the opposite. He hit Bray Wyatt in the head of the chair, but Bray Wyatt disappeared. The Fiend gave Cena the mandible claw, and Bray Wyatt was the referee counting the pinfall 1, 2, 3. So the Fiend defeats John Cena. Not a traditional match, but what is a win for Bray Wyatt? This was his first WrestleMania victory ever. And for 6 years, he's been on this roster and hasn't won a single WrestleMania match, which is just a shame. And if Randy Orton and Edge, they fought a last man standing match. A lot of people didn't like it, but I thought it was okay. I mean, there were no fans in the building. Both men are in their 40s. They're in a warehouse. There's not really much those guys could really do here. But this last man standing match, it was like 40 minutes long. It was okay. It told that story. There's even a spot here. It was back in the exercise equipment room. You have Randy Orton hanging Edge. And a lot of people think this was a reference to Chris Benoit. Now, the Chris Benoit documentary was released about a couple weeks before WrestleMania. Now, was this a reference to Chris Benoit? Was it a coincidence? I necessarily never thought that, but I was watching Joe Cronen's reaction to this, and he said, hey, they were pulling a Chris Benoit, and to me, someone in the back saw the documentary, and they referenced this in a match. Whenever someone is producing something WWE related without the WWE involved, they want a piece of that pie. The Edge defeated Randy Orton in the last man standing match. We get the main event: Drew McIntyre, Brock Lesnar. Drew McIntyre claymores Lesnar. He beats Lesnar in 5 minutes. He is the new WWE champion. Part 2, I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. My overall rating for WrestleMania as a whole would probably be a 7. The show was okay based on what they had to deal with here, but I could have done a lot more, like build a pirate ship in the middle of the PC, or put in a bunch of fancy lights to hide the background area, or go off location. And they said that this WrestleMania would be filmed from different locations, but it wasn't. Only 2 matches were. That was The Fiend and Cena, and Styles and Undertaker. 95% of the show was filmed at the PC. But overall, 7 out of 10, the show was okay. You get the night after WrestleMania. You have Bianca Belair make her debut. You have the Forgotten Sons make their debut. Against Zelina Vega, form a new stable with Austin Theory, Andrade, and Garza. But for a couple weeks, the trio looked pretty dominant, pretty interesting. Nia Jax made a return after a year of absence. Against Seth Rollins, he was doing this new Monday Night Messiah gimmick. Like, he came out to church music for his theme song. This was a pretty cool character take on Seth Rollins. Then you had Drew McIntyre coming out, addressing how to beat Brock Lesnar, and all of a sudden you have the Big Show come out. He challenges Drew McIntyre to a match for a title right here, right now. Drew accepts, and he defeats the Big Show. This match was pretty good, went on 20 minutes, but I did have my concerns. Would the company really screw over Drew McIntyre? I had my doubts that Drew's reign was going to end up like Seth Rollins. Into that on the next slide. We have Drew McIntyre for the next couple of weeks. He would do a short feud with Selena Vega's trio. Did like open challenge matches against, Garza, Theory, Andrade. I couldn't really care for this. I'm sick and tired of these fighting champions just putting their belt on the line every week, winning an open challenge. I'm not for it. But right away here, Drew might be screwing the pooch. Then you have Buddy Murphy enter an open challenge. McIntyre with defeat Buddy Murphy. And you have Seth Rollins come out and lay out Drew McIntyre with a curb stomp. And this set up a good feud between the two for Money in the Bank. So I was thinking, you know what? Maybe Drew won't be like Seth. Maybe he will be. Maybe we'll have a good title reign. So we have a triple threat match on SmackDown for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. The participants who didn't compete at WrestleMania competed here. This was one of the biggies. And they are once again the tag team champions. I'm not really a fan of this. New Day as tag team champions. Miz and Morrison took the belts right off of them, only to give it back to the New Day. Then next week you had a segment. New Day and Miz and Morrison, who was going to face the New Day for tag team championships at Money in the Bank. They had the Forgotten Sons come out. They had the Lucha House Party come out. It was announced that the tag team titles will be defended in a multi-man match at Money in the Bank. Backstage, you have MVP. Wants to form a relationship with Bobby Lashley. He thinks he can give Bobby Lashley back to the land of prominence, become a world champion. We had a SmackDown hacker. He had a hoodie on, sitting in front of a computer screen, trying to expose like WWE secrets and stuff like that. Then you have Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt do a feud for Money in the Bank. And I didn't really care much about this feud because there was nothing towards it, other than that both competitors were in the Wyatt family. But I did like what Bray was doing. As far as the bills goes towards Money in the Bank, it wasn't really that good at all. The only thing I had interest in was Drew McIntyre and Seth Rollins. Kind of about it. Money in the Bank had Jeff Hardy defeat Cesaro, who had the New Day retain their tag team titles against the Lucha House Party, with Morrison and the Forgotten Sons. Bobby Lashley defeat R-Truth, and Bayley defeat Tamina. You have Braun Strowman pin Mr. Rogers, Bray Wyatt. So, should the Fiend really have won the championship here? Should the Fiend really have beaten Bill Goldberg? The answer is no, because if he was a champion going into this match, he would have lost. And I have an issue with champions losing. So, Braun beats Bray Wyatt here. You have Drew McIntyre beat Seth Rollins. Then you have the Money in the Bank ladder match. The men's and women's ladder match would happen simultaneously. It's both will be happening at the same time. So we're introduced to the women. They fight around the headquarters. Go into a room where there's a fake Money in the Bank briefcase hanging above the ceiling. Dana Brooke and Carmella were fighting over for it. Dana Brooke knocks out Carmella, and she takes the briefcase off the hook. She thinks she won it, but Stephanie says, no, you have to go to the roof to retrieve the briefcase. You didn't win here. And then you have the women make it to the roof. Like Nia Jax was there. She took out Shayna Baszler along the way. Asuka was there. Lacey Evans was there. And the Money in the Bank briefcase was won by Asuka. I couldn't really care for this one. It should have been Shayna Baszler. No, she didn't win. She didn't make it to the roof. That's 3 huge opportunities Shayna had to do something in this company, and she failed. She failed at the Rumble, failed at WrestleMania, and failed here at Money in the Bank. I hate to say it, but she's kind of buried. If they don't save her from here, she's buried. But they gave the Oscar, I guess, because she was there throughout the pandemic shows, and they wanted to award her with some kind of token. Then you had the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. This was pretty cool. Like seeing AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan, they were battling into Vince McMahon's office. That was cool. Brother Love was cool. Seeing him there. Then you have Paul Heyman. He's like eating lunch. And you see Otis, all the other participants come in, and they start fighting each other, and they just threw Paul Heyman's lunch in his face. When we get to the roof, it's Baron Corbin. He threw Rey Mysterio and Aleister Black off the roof. AJ Styles, he was climbing up to grab the briefcase. He dropped the briefcase after fighting Baron Corbin, and the briefcase fell into Otis's hands. That means Otis won the Money in the Bank briefcase. This was a little bit weird, a little bit strange, but I am for it because they are pushing Otis, and I'm all for it. WWE pushing new talent. We'll get the build towards Backlash. We have Edge making his return again. He says he's on the hunt for Randy Orton. Randy Orton comes out and challenges him to just a regular match at Backlash. I like the continuation of their feud. They finally had another face-to-face confrontation. They're kind of making up for what they did at WrestleMania. If Randy Orton says that Edge has doubts, he can't do it anymore. We got like the peep show of Christian. Edge and Christian are reuniting at Christian. Warning Edge about the dangers of facing Randy Orton. He wants Edge to be confident, to be clear-headed, not to go into Backlash making any mistakes. Then we have Apollo Crews defeats Andrade. Apollo Crews is the new United States champion. I didn't really care much for this because Apollo's been a jobber for 4 years. But I'll give him a chance. But they also started to bury Selena Vega's faction here. Like they lost like 6 weeks in a row. Drew McIntyre and six-man tags. They really started to come up with plans to break up these guys. Just getting these guys together. And you have Drew McIntyre. He had a feud with Bobby Lashley. And Bobby Lashley attacked Drew McIntyre. Lashley was selling the effects of the full Nelson. Which is ironic because this was the move that Chris Masters used. Lashley was the first person to break the master lock. He even beat up Ricochet with this move, which was funny to see. So the feud between Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley was okay. I didn't think Lashley was ready to challenge McIntyre, but it was all right. And you have Becky Lynch come out. She announced that she was pregnant. So therefore, she had to vacate the championship. Asuka came out. She gave the title to Asuka. So some fans had an issue. They were saying that, they should have created a tournament, this and that. But I just treat it as a normal Money in the Bank catch. But imagine this was Shayna Baszler who won Money in the Bank. Imagine Becky Lynch giving the championship to her rival. That would be much cooler, more emotional. But no, they gave it to Asuka. And Becky Lynch leaving, some people saying some people were going to say this was a good thing. To allow the company to build new stars. Unless this is a bad thing because they're not going to build new stars. So they're going to find someone and they're going to put her in Becky Lynch's place until Becky comes back. Either Nia Jax or Charlotte Flair. This is kind of what happened here. If Nia Jax come back, she interviewed Asuka. I guess this was all right. And you have Sheamus do a feud with Jeff Hardy. There was like this big car accident scene outside the PC. It showed like Jeff Hardy's car ramming into Elias's car. When the police came, they arrested Jeff Hardy. It was Sheamus who was the one who was framed at Jeff Hardy. Sheamus was talking about Jeff Hardy's issues of alcohol and drugs. And I happen to appreciate this. They're bringing realism and the wrestling, Jeff Hardy's real issues into the WWE product, which I enjoy. It's rare. So I like the feud that those guys had going into Backlash. And then you have the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders. They would do a feud. It was called the If You Can Do It, We Can Do It Better series. And these guys did a series of events. They had like a decathlon, basketball, croquet, golf, archery. Some fans thought these segments were a little bit cheesy and cartoonish, even though they may be. I like these. Why? Because it gives both the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders some charisma. Just something that the Viking Raiders really needed. The Street Profits had charisma. They just weren't using it correctly. But here, I thought that they did. So as far as the feuds going into Backlash, I thought it was pretty good. Treacherous build towards Mania, but the build towards Backlash was pretty good. Backlash comes. You have Apollo Crews retain his U.S. title against Andrade. And Sheamus getting upset victory over Jeff Hardy. That would kind of even the series between them. Right before this, we would have an Intercontinental title tournament because Sami Zayn was stripped of the title. Jeff Hardy beat Sheamus. So here, Sheamus wins to even the score. You have Asuka and Nia Jax go to a double count out. So, again, I can't care about much for Asuka. She can't get a clean victory. You have to protect Nia Jax because she's The Rock's cousin. Then you had a triple threat match for the women's tag team titles. You had the iconic space Sasha Banks and Bayley versus Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. Sasha Banks and Bayley would win. They walk out with the tag team champions. I was not fond of this. Apparently, there was going to be a feud between two going into SummerSlam, and I knew what they were doing. They were going to get all the women the titles and cause a rift between the two. But if you're going to have these two feuds going into SummerSlam, Survivor Series, or next year's WrestleMania, you don't need to have these two win all the belts unless you're going to build some new stars. Would they do that? Maybe, maybe not. If Braun Strowman defeat John Morrison and The Miz, I didn't really care for this. The Miz and Morrison coming out of WrestleMania, they were really starting to slow down. Morrison kind of began to look like an afterthought. McIntyre defeated Bobby Lashley. The match was pretty good. Then you had the Street Profits take on the Viking Raiders. This was a cinematic match. These two would fight all around the PC. Match would come to a new contest because you had a bunch of ninjas led by Akira Tozawa. They would attack both the Viking Raiders and the Street Profits. Viking Raiders, Street Profits. They would have to work together to take out the ninjas. And this was pretty good. It's character building, character development. Sometimes enemies have to work together. Then we got Edge versus Orton. This match was billed as the greatest wrestling match ever. Which some fans took this too seriously. I didn't. It was just a marketing scheme. It's just to apologize to the fans about WrestleMania. Oh, you didn't like their match at WrestleMania? We're going to give it to you again. Not that I asked for it. But this match was pretty good, man, like 45 minutes. Edge tore a tricep. He tore a tricep for us. This match was good. Orton would win with a punt kick and an RKO. Now, was this the greatest wrestling match ever? No. But based on what they're trying to tell, yes, it was. Backlash, I like the event. I'd probably give it a 10 out of 10. They really did a good job coming out of WrestleMania. Then we got some news that Paul Heyman was removed from the executive director. He was replaced by Bruce Pritchard. Bruce Pritchard fighting both shows. And fans once again coming out saying, oh, there's going to be change, this and that. I was like, no, there's not going to be any change. There's no change last year when Heyman was hired as an executive director. What makes you think there's going to be change this time around? There's not going to be any change for this product. Come on, guys. But I will give Bruce Pritchard a chance. And the first couple of weeks, he did some interesting work. It just wasn't enough to say the damage that Paul Heyman did. You had Orton come out saying that he ended Edge's career, and you have Christian come on out. Calling out Randy Orton. Randy Orton challenged him to one more match. Christian said no, he doesn't want one more match. But Orton gave him some time to think about it. We saw Flair there talking to Christian. Then we get the match between Christian and Orton. This lasted like 1 second. And Ric Flair come out, distract Christian, give him a low blow. Orton does a butt kick. And Christian, Orton wins. This was a pretty cool scene by Orton and Christian here. Orton, he's really building himself up as a dominant heel. I would love to see him go up against Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship. He would be an interesting opponent choice for him. Big Show was there. He helped out the Street Profits by they did like a quick little feuds with Andrade and Garza. I like seeing the Big Show there. He had an Intercontinental title tournament. Zayn couldn't make it because of COVID concerns. They took the title off of him. He had his huge tournament. Jeff Hardy beat Sheamus. Both of them were taken out of the tournament because of the whole car crash scene. And then you have Daniel Bryan, AJ Styles as the final two. They feuded over the Intercontinental title for a couple of weeks. The finals match of the tournament, which my boy AJ won. So Bruce Pritchard, so far so good. Can you keep it going? Maybe, maybe not. Going through the build for Extreme Rules, you have Randy Orton. He would do an alliance with Ric Flair. We have the Big Show come out, and he would call out Randy Orton for attacking Edge and Christian, saying that Edge and Christian were best friends. How could you attack him so viciously like that? And you have Orton say, "Well, Big Show, step back. I don't want to do to you what I did to Edge and Christian. Leave." That didn't happen. Big Show challenged Randy Orton to a match. Then you have Dolph Ziggler come out and challenge Drew McIntyre for Extreme Rules. Their feud was okay, but right away, the quality of Drew McIntyre's feuds were dropping. He went up here with Brock Lesnar, he dropped a little bit lower with Seth Rollins, dropped a little bit lower with Lashley, now you're dropping lower with Dolph Ziggler, and even the ratings were falling. I was concerned that he might take the title off him, but this feud was all right. So they brought up the time that they were teaming up together in 2018 as Dogs of War. Dolph Ziggler said he brought in Drew McIntyre into the company. They even brought in Heath Slater to do a feud within the feud, which was pretty cool. Then you have Asuka feud with Sasha Banks going into Extreme Rules. I didn't really care for this. You don't need to give Sasha Banks and Bayley all the championships. You don't need that. And yes, the Elena Vegas trio, they began to break up. First, they kick out Austin Theory. Then Austin Theory would side with Seth Rollins and Buddy Murphy. They were in a tag team match with Dominic and Aleister Black. The match ended in a disqualification. Seth Rollins would attack. I think it was Dominic. Attacking Dominic, Rey Mysterio would come in for the save. But it was a numbers game. Seth, Buddy, Lawson, they would all attack Rey Mysterio. You'd have Seth Rollins gouge out Rey Mysterio's eye on the steel steps. I like Seth's work. In 2020, he feuds with Kevin Owens, Drew McIntyre, Rey Mysterio. He's doing some great heel work. Then you have Seth Rollins challenge Rey Mysterio to a match at Extreme Rules, an eye for an eye match. That was the stipulation. First person to extract the eye wins. Rey Mysterio would come on the Titantron and accept. I like their feud going to Extreme Rules, but it was repetitive at some times. MVP would do a feud with Apollo Crews, going into Extreme Rules. Guess that was alright. You have Sheamus do a feud with Jeff Hardy. He would challenge Jeff Hardy to a bar fight once again. Bring up Jeff Hardy's demons. This feud was alright. And you have Bray Wyatt continues with Braun Strowman. This time it was the Swamp Man, Bray Wyatt. All the buzzards, Bray Wyatt. And I didn't really care about this. I don't care for Braun Strowman, but I did like what Bray Wyatt was doing here. He was doing like this whole three phases of Foley stuff. We got Mr. Rogers, Bray Wyatt. The old Bray Wyatt, and then we got the Fiend. We have Matt Riddle making his debut. He would challenge AJ. He would interrupt AJ Styles' championship celebration. He challenged him later. Challenged him to a match later that night. He would beat AJ Styles, a non-title match. That would set up a title match sometime in the future. As far as the build going into Extreme Rules, it was just very kind of lackluster. Man, like the Randy Orton stuff. I like Seth Rollins. That's kind of about it. I mean, Asuka, Sasha Banks didn't really care for. Braun Strowman didn't care for. You're already breaking up a faction, which is Zelina Vega. Those guys could have done something interesting, but they want to go ahead and get rid of it. Dolph Ziggler, Drew McIntyre, that was alright. Sheamus was pretty good, but really going into Extreme Rules, it was alright. Thought Bruce Pritchard did alright the last couple of weeks going into the show, but just didn't really save the damage that Paul Heyman did to this show. We got Extreme Rules. We got Kevin Owens defeating Buddy Murphy. And Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura, they would defeat the New Day. They become the new SmackDown Tag Team Champions. Yet Apollo Crews, he would fail to show up at Extreme Rules because of COVID concerns. And MVP would self-proclaim himself as the United States Championship. He wins the match via forfeit. And Bayley, she defeated Nikki Cross. It's Seth Rollins defeat Rey Mysterio by gouging out Rey Mysterio's eye. This match was pretty good. There were weapons involved. Seth went at the end. He would take Rey's face and slam against the steps, and he'd pull the eye out. This match was pretty good. A little bit rough at some points. You didn't know if Rey was going to pull Seth's eye out or Seth was just going to violently pull Rey's eye out. But this match did what it needed to do. And then you would have Sasha Banks technically beat Asuka. The referee got incapacitated. So Bayley put on the referee shirt and would count the pinfall. Sasha Banks technically wins, but doesn't. And I guess she walks out the Rollins title. Yet Drew McIntyre beat Dolph Ziggler. The stipulation was it was an Extreme Rules match for Dolph Ziggler. But the regular match for Drew McIntyre, Drew wins. Then we would get a swamp fight with Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt. This was pretty cool. They were talking about the history between Bray and Braun and the Wyatt family. This was a good cinematic match. They fight their way all the way to the swamp. Braun Strowman will throw Bray Wyatt into the swamp. I guess Braun wins. But then you see the Fiend come out. He grabs Braun Strowman's face and drives him into the swamp. As far as Extreme Rules are going to show us alright, but as far as the false finishes and the cliffhangers in the show, they weren't really needed. And I'm talking about the MVP match, Bayley, a Sasha Banks and Asuka match, and the swamp fight. They're just weird cliffhangers. You didn't know who won. I don't know why they include that in there. That's what Bruce Pritchard does. He does swerves. He does that a lot. Then we get the Bills going into SummerSlam. First, we have Randy Orton defeat the Big Show on Raw. Then you have Randy Orton challenge Drew McIntyre. We have Drew McIntyre come out the next week. He responds to Randy Orton. He accepts the challenge. Then we have Shawn Michaels come out the next week. Confront the Randy Orton and talk about their history, his prediction on the match with Drew McIntyre. Then you have Randy Orton attack Shawn Michaels by giving him the RKO. Drew would come out for the save. As far as the build between Randy and Drew goes, this was pretty cool. It was pretty good. Then you had a match on Raw between Sasha Banks and Asuka. Sasha Banks won, so she is the new Raw Women's Champion. I personally didn't really care much for it. Again, you don't really need to give Sasha Banks and Bayley the women's titles at the women's tag titles. Don't need to give them all the belts. But then you would have Asuka have a rematch with Sasha Banks at SummerSlam. She would also feud with Bayley. So she wins a tri-branded battle royal featuring women from Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. She wins that one. Shayna Baszler was also in that match. Her and Asuka were the final two. It should have been Shayna Baszler, but no, but Asuka wins. And that's 4 major matches for Shayna Baszler. And she's barely featured on TV. Like, this is not good for Shayna Baszler. So the feud between those two, I didn't really care much about them. Seth Rollins do a feud with Dominic. Now, continuing from Extreme Rules, this was pretty good. This was Dominic's first match in the company, his first singles match in the company. And then you have Raw Underground make its debut. Shane McMahon returns after a 10-month absence since losing to Kevin Owens. Raw Underground was there. I like the idea of it. It was dark, it was gritty. You had like female dancers dancing around. You had the Hurt Business there taking over the club. And they had a new star that was being built in Dabba-Kato. I liked the idea, but the execution was just very poor. And next week, the dancers were gone. They just did the same stuff every week, a bunch of jobber squash matches, trying to replicate what they did in MMA. Like, there's no direction with this gimmick. Now, if they were using this gimmick to set up a match between Lashley and Lesnar, this would have been all right, but Raw Underground, it was a great idea, but they executed poorly. Then you have Retribution make their debut. First, they were in the PC, wearing hoodies and sweatpants. First, I thought they were Akira Tozawa's Ninjas, wrecking up the PC because they were moving out to the Thunderdome, which was, they're in the Amway Center. They have thousands of computer screens representing a virtual crowd. So fans are back in the arena, not in person, but virtually. As far as my thoughts of Retribution, there was some potential, but then the names of Retribution came out. Slapjack, Mace, T-Bar, Retaliation, Reckoning, like just some of the most cheesiest names you could ever think of. Then you have a bar fight between Sheamus and Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy won that one. Then he would enter into a feud with AJ Styles. AJ Styles talking about that he beaten a lot of people in the past. He beat Matt Riddle in a match on SmackDown, so their series is tied 1-1. So you had Matt Riddle debut. SmackDown told this ridiculous story about why he doesn't wear shoes. He said he got frostbite, and he challenges AJ Styles to a match. He beats AJ Styles in a non-title match. That set up a title match, which AJ won. So Matt Riddle, he's in the doghouse. I never really liked Matt Riddle, but not a good way to build a new star in Matt Riddle. That's what they wanted to. Anyway, Jeff would come out, be the next challenger for AJ Styles. Kind of wish this match would take place at SummerSlam, but they put it on SmackDown. First night in the Thunderdome, I get it. Jeff Hardy would win the Intercontinental title off of AJ Styles. That was pretty good. And yet Braun Strowman defeated The Fiend. I didn't really care about the Braun Strowman stuff, but the Alexa Bliss stuff was pretty cool. You had like Braun Strowman body slam Alexa Bliss, and then The Fiend would come along, scare Alexa Bliss, and give her the mandible claw. That was pretty cool. As far as the build going to SummerSlam was all right for the most part. We have SummerSlam. You have Apollo Crews defeat MVP. You have the Street Profits beat Garza and Andrade. I didn't really care for this one. I mean, dude, these guys were fighting each other each and every single week for like 4 months now. Enough is enough. If Mandy Rose defeats Sonya Deville, it was a loser leaves town. Hair versus hair match. Mandy wins. If Bayley defeats Asuka. And then you have Dominic. You have Seth Rollins defeat Dominic. I think Dominic should have won here. You know, get this guy established, propel him to the Intercontinental Championship scene. But they give Seth the victory here. Then you have Asuka defeat Sasha Banks. I have an issue with this one because I can't take Sasha Banks seriously. Every time she wins a championship, she loses it a month later. This is what happened. And you're kind of erasing Asuka's first title reign as well. You know, if you're just going to give Asuka a title here at SummerSlam, why not just build up Asuka instead of giving her the Money in the Bank briefcase and all? Or don't give the title to Sasha Banks, or just have Sasha Banks put over someone else, like in Naomi, or Ruby Riott, or Mandy Rose. And put over someone new instead of using the same old cookies in the cookie jar like Asuka. You had Drew McIntyre defeat Randy Orton by a roll-up. Drew McIntyre retains. This was shocking, so I thought Randy Orton was going to win here, but just like last year with Kofi Kingston, the WWE Champion prevails. Then we get the main event. Braun Strowman The Fiend, Universal title. The Fiend will defeat Braun Strowman and becomes the Universal Champion. Then after the match, you have Roman Reigns make his return, and he would spear the Fiend Bray Wyatt. Roman Reigns took a few months off because of COVID concerns. So they would pull him out of WrestleMania in a unique fashion, but they didn't. They just took him out and plugged in Braun Strowman. So I kind of would have done an injury angle here. I'd have Braun attack Roman Reigns or spear him, and that would magically disqualify Roman Reigns, but they didn't do that. They kind of lied about that, but Roman's back. I'm happy for him. We get a pay-per-view a week after SummerSlam. I don't know why they did this, but, you know, they did that anyway. You had the Riot Squad defeat the Iconics. You would have Lashley defeat Apollo Crews, so Lashley's the new United States champion. Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax, they formed a tag team. I thought it was going to be Asuka and Shayna Baszler. But instead it was Nia Jax, a makeshift tag team. They beat Sasha Banks and Bayley. Again, this is another example of why they didn't need to win all the titles. Instead of building up a makeshift tag team, they could have built up a tag team that's already established, like Mandy Rose with Dana Brooke, the Iconics, or the Riot Squad, especially them. But no, they just put the titles on random people that they already use. Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler, the Asukas. I couldn't really care, but I am glad that Shayna Baszler is a victory. She has been having a rough time on the main roster. You have Matt Riddle defeat Baron Corbin. You have Seth. You have Rey Mysterio and Dominic. They teamed up to defeat Seth Rollins and Buddy Murphy. You have Big E defeat Sheamus. Keith Lee made his debut the night after SummerSlam, challenged Randy Orton. Their match would happen later on Raw, but ended disqualification by Drew McIntyre. I don't really like that. They kind of ruined Keith Lee's debut. I was like, why not save this match for Payback? But then they rescheduled the match for Payback, which Keith Lee defeated Randy Orton in 7 minutes. You know, probably right decision there. The main event was a triple threat. Roman Reigns defeated Braun Strowman to become the new Universal Champion. As far as payback is payback, pay-per-view, it was pretty good. You know, they did star building in Matt Riddle, Big E, Keith Lee, stuff I've been asking for years. Finally, some star building. I don't know why it took them this long, but they did. Then we got the build towards Clash of Champions. You had Roman Reigns come on out. He was addressing his next challenger for Clash of Champions, and who it could be. He had a multi-man match. Determined the challenger. You had like Jey Uso versus Sheamus versus Matt Riddle versus Baron Corbin. Jey Uso would win. So it'd be Jey Uso that feuds with Roman Reigns. This was interesting. You know, their family, cousin versus cousin, really concerned, but they brought up the bloodline and Roman Reigns' Samoan family heritage. That was pretty cool. The alliance between Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns. Pretty cool. Roman Reigns, he was towing the line with face or heel. He didn't really know who he was yet. You have Jeff Hardy and AJ Styles. They defeated one another. Out comes Sami Zayn with his Intercontinental title, saying that he never lost it. So he's the true Intercontinental Champion, and all through the feud towards Clash of Champions, and this was pretty good. I like seeing Sami Zayn back. He never lost the title, so he technically is the Intercontinental Champion. Sami Zayn was doing some great heel work. With Seth Rollins, he would do a paternity test. So we're bringing back the Eddie Guerrero stuff from 05. Lie, cheat, and steal, Eddie Guerrero. So then the Rey Mysterio family would come out. We had like Seth Rollins doing what he did. Seth Rollins said that Dominic might not be Rey's son, or Leah might not be Rey's daughter. Rey Mysterio said, "How could you say that stuff? Leah's just a young girl. She's naive." And Leah just stormed backstage. And we saw a kind of a romantic relationship being formed between Leah and Murphy. It's kind of interesting. And then you have Seth Rollins and Murphy. They were kind of becoming at odds with one another. Then you have Leah and Dominic being at odds with one another. This was pretty cool to see. You got this dysfunctional family against crazy Seth Rollins. Rollins was just challenging Rey Mysterio's his thought process, his mentality. And this feud was pretty good. I like the work that Seth and Rey have done this summer. Some points in the feud, it is repetitive. If they can cut the repetitiveness, then their feud would be like a 10 out of 10. But due to the repetitiveness, man, I have to give the feud maybe like a 7 or 8. Just depends on the type of night that they're having. Then you have a rematch for the women's tag team titles. Sasha Banks Bayley lose to Nia Jackson, Shayna Baszler. You have Bayley turn on Sasha Banks. You have Bayley explain her actions, saying that Sasha Banks was holding her down and she needed to grow. And next we get Sasha Banks explain, her actions, explain Bayley's actions, saying that she was going to turn on Bayley before Bayley turned on her. It was all right, but they could have told a lot more, like about the time in NXT or Sasha Banks' hiatus. I wasn't really a big fan of their feud. It was all right, but I wasn't a diehard fan like everyone else was this summer, gobbling everything up that they did. So they didn't really build up any new stars. The division was still being neglected. Everyone still felt like they were buried in it. They didn't really do anything good for the women's division. Then you had a feud between Braun Strowman and Dabba-Kato. Instead of a feud, you had Shane McMahon out there doing a Kevin Owens show segment. This would lead to a Raw Underground match between Braun Strowman and Dabba-Kato, which Braun Strowman beat Dabba-Kato. That was kind of it for Raw Underground. Like, you had a potential rising star in Dabba-Kato, yet Braun just buried. Then you have Drew McIntyre and Keith Lee. Keith Lee comes out. He wants to challenge Drew McIntyre for the championship at Clash of Champions. Adam Pearce came out and he says that if Keith Lee beats Drew McIntyre, he'll be added to the triple threat match at Clash of Champions between Drew and Randy Orton. So we had a match next week on Raw. Following on Raw, you have Retribution coming to the ring. You attack both Drew and Keith Lee. I guess Drew wins by disqualification. Yeah, so Drew's going to face Randy Orton. Randy Orton coming afterwards to give Drew McIntyre an RKO. So once again, Keith Lee, man, he has not had a good run on the main roster. I mean, he did beat Randy Orton. Besides that, every single one of his matches have ended some type of disqualification. Not good. It made him look like a complete afterthought. But the story between Drew and Randy was all right. You know, they were selling the punt kick versus the Claymore kick. We get a Clash of Champions. You get Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura. They defeated the House Party. You get Asuka defeat Zelina Vega. You had Lashley defeat Apollo Crews yet again. We have the Street Profits once again defeat Andrade and Garza. And for 6 months, these guys have been fighting each other. Enough is enough. Stop these matches. If you want to have a 6-month long feud between the Street Profits and Garza and Andrade, you don't need to have these guys wrestle every week. Just tell a 6-month long story. That's what you need to do. When you have Bayley come out, she would issue an open challenge. You have Asuka answer the challenge. Asuka won here by disqualification. You have Sasha Banks come on in. She attacked Bayley with like a steel chair. So she got kind of her revenge. I don't know why I did this segment here. Could just Bayley do a promo. Then Sasha Banks come on and attack her. Then you have Sami Zayn defeat Jeff Hardy and AJ Styles. He once again becomes the Intercontinental Champion. We have Roman Reigns defeat Jey Uso. After the match, he would be known as the Tribal Chief. He would beat down Jey Uso, and that means he is a heel. We have Randy Orton versus Drew McIntyre, Clash of Champions, ambulance match. This was a pretty good ambulance match. We had Big Show there, Christian there, and Shawn Michaels super kick. Randy Orton, he pushed him off the ambulance, sent Orton crashing through the table. Drew McIntyre would Claymore Randy Orton into the ambulance, and Ric Flair would drive the ambulance away. Pretty much all the legends that Randy Orton targeted, they kind of got their revenge on Randy Orton. Then on SmackDown, you would have Jey Uso and Roman Reigns. They would their feud going into Hell in a Cell. You had Bayley and Sasha Banks. They would sign their contract for their Hell in a Cell match. We have Buddy Murphy and Seth Rollins. They would break up. You would have Buddy Murphy form a relationship with Aaliyah. But he is still not trusted by the Mysterios. Then on Raw, you have Drew McIntyre surrounded by Big Show, Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels, and Christian. They would like to congratulate McIntyre for beating Orton. And then you have Randy Orton sneak around the back where legends were playing poker. He would shut off the lights and he would hit all the legends with a steel chair. And that would set up another match between Drew and Randy at Hell in a Cell. Then you have Otis. He would be involved in a feud with The Miz. Miz doesn't like Otis holding the Money in the Bank briefcase, so he sues him. Takes him to the wrestler's court. You have Teddy Long, Ron Simmons there as the bailiff. You have JBL as the judge. And originally he would roll in Otis's favor, but after The Miz pays him off, He rules in Mrs. favor and he orders Otis to defend his Money in the Bank briefcase at Hell in a Cell. You would have the Hurt Business feud with Retribution. And this is pretty interesting. If Retribution goes on top here, you can see a new dominant faction debut in the company and cause some havoc. But that didn't happen for 4 weeks in a row. You had these guys lose to the Hurt Business. You had like the first match between those two teams, the match ended disqualification. Then next week you have like Lashley tap out T-Bar in 5 seconds. And for 4 weeks, these guys cannot win a match against the Hurt Business. So you're kind of burying these guys. The only thing that was cool is Mustafa Ali joined the Hurt Business. Even that couldn't really save him. Then you have Kevin Owens. He did some short feuds with Bray Wyatt. That was pretty cool. They had a false count anywhere match on SmackDown. That was pretty good. You have Aleister Black come back. He would target Kevin Owens. He has an eye patch on because in the summer you have Seth Rollins. He also gouged out Aleister Black's eye on the steel steps. He was gone for months. And you would think that Aleister Black here would get a win over Kevin Owens. But that didn't happen. He comes back with an eye patch, and for like 4 weeks in a row, Kevin Owens defeats Aleister Black. You have Aleister Black just job out to Kevin Owens. So the dark room promo guy, spent a year and a half doing dark room promos, can't beat the talk show host, Kevin Owens. That shows you how Vince feels about Aleister Black. It shows you that Vince does still value Kevin Owens. Hell in a Cell, you had R-Truth defeat Drew Gulak. You would have Elias defeat Jeff Hardy by disqualification. It was nice seeing Elias back. Jeff Hardy, he took Elias's guitar and hit him in the back. He's DQ'd. You have Lashley beat Slapjack in like 5 seconds. That was embarrassing. Miz and Otis. The Miz would defeat Otis. Except Tucker Knight, he would hit Otis in the back of the head with the Money in the Bank briefcase, which tells you that the heavy machinery is no more. Tucker has turned heel, which I kind of figured this out a while back ago when they were starting to push Otis. And then the Miz wins. He walks away with the Money in the Bank briefcase. So part of me actually kind of likes this. They're putting Otis in good quality feuds. The Miz, Dolph Ziggler. She's trying to get Otis over, getting the Money in the Bank briefcase. But now she took it off of him. Where does Otis go from here? Do they still push him, or does it go back to being hater? You have the Hell in a Cell match with the women. You have Sasha Banks beat Bayley. Sasha Banks will finally get her big moment that she's wanted. The question is, can she hold on to the championship? We get the Hell in a Cell match. You have Randy Orton defeat Drew McIntyre. Randy Orton, once again, your WWE champion. He's a 14-time WWE champion. Even though like their feud going into Hell in a Cell, I don't know why they stretched this out. I'm a fan of Orton and McIntyre at SummerSlam. I'm a fan of Keith Lee and Randy Orton at Payback. But you could have had Keith Lee face Drew McIntyre at Clash of Champions instead of Orton. And you can have Orton come back and then target McIntyre, but whatever, Orton's champion. Then you have Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso. This was an I Quit Hell in a Cell match. Match was pretty good. It was dramatic, emotional. Jey Uso would not quit. Take Jimmy Uso coming back into the ring. He's begging Roman Reigns to stop. Roman Reigns is even crying, but then he starts to attack Jimmy Uso. That's when Jey Uso says, I quit. And then he falls in line with Roman Reigns. You see Roman Reigns playing his handheld race at the end with the Wild Stones and Paul Heyman right next to him. The only issue with this was Jey Uso falling in line. But she didn't fall in line so quickly. They could have continued to build this up, Have Roman Reigns beat the hell out of Rikishi and the Wild Samoans. Like force Jey Uso to follow him on. But whatever. Hell Cell, it's all right. Then you have Seth Rollins versus Dominic. Steel cage match. You have Buddy Murphy. Screw Seth Rollins. Dominic wins. So this shows you that the Mysterios can trust Murphy. Murphy has split from Rollins. Murphy and Mysterio become friends. Then you have a triple threat match to see we'd have Survivor Series and qualifications coming up. We have Sheamus versus Matt Riddle. Sheamus wins. And you have Braun Strowman versus Keith Lee. Braun Strowman wins, which is not good for Keith Lee. Majority of his matches end in DQ, and he can't beat Braun Strowman. That's not that good. So you have AJ Styles coming out. He was addressing his team. Sheamus and Braun Strowman. You have Matt Riddle and Keith Lee come out. Matt Riddle, he starts calling everybody nicknames. He does these weird promos backstage like he's some type of stoner. Smoking a blunt, drinking alcohol. I like these promos. If he was a heel, he could be a prick and screw the rest of his matches. That would be cool. Then you have Adam Pearce come out. He would do a second chance tag team match. He would team up Sheamus and AJ to face Braun and Keith Lee. Well, Keith Lee and Matt Riddle. Sheamus and Braun Strowman team up against Keith Lee and Matt Riddle. Keith Lee and Matt Riddle will win the tag team match. They are added to the Survivor Series team. Then next week you have Team Raw versus Retribution. On Raw, Retribution get their first victory. I like the story here between Team Raw. All members are dysfunctional. They have to find some way to work together to defeat Team SmackDown. So the story was cool to tell. And I like what they had going on here. Then you have Nia Jax. She would put Lana through a table for like 10 weeks. I don't really care for this. I know they're trying to get me to have sympathy for Lana, but I've never really cared that much for Lana. Then you have Drew McIntyre versus Randy Orton for the WWE Championship. First they advertised for Roman Reigns versus Randy Orton for Survivor Series, but then they pulled a switcheroo, bait and switch. They had Drew beat Orton. Now it's Drew versus Roman Reigns at Survivor Series, a rematch from their WrestleMania match a year ago. And I wasn't really too keen on this. Why take the title off McIntyre or give the championship right back to him? Everything that's reinvigorated Drew McIntyre, show that he can be beaten and then show that he can get back to the top. But they do this every year with Survivor Series. Vince always has a major championship exchange hands. I don't know why he does it, but I would really love to see Roman and Randy Orton. You have Roman Reigns talk about Randy Orton's family history and their legacies. That didn't happen. Then you have Drew come over to SmackDown and confront Roman Reigns for Survivor Series, and they did cut a good promo together. Roman said he's number one, Drew's number two. So that was pretty good to see. When you have Survivor Series, you would have a dual branded battle royal. Miz would win that one. He's a Money in the Bank winner, so they make him look strong. You have Team Raw victorious over Team SmackDown, which was pretty good. I like the story going on between Team Raw. My only issue with this, it was Retribution. Like, they should have had Retribution, wreck the locker room. They should have had him beat the Hurt Business, and they should be in the Survivor Series main event against Team Raw instead of Team SmackDown. Instead of having Team Raw versus Retribution on Raw, move that to the Survivor Series, let Retribution go over. Retribution will become a dominant faction. They opted to go with the Team SmackDown versus Team Raw concept, which they didn't really need this for this show. As you can see, who's being advertised as the poster on the poster. If Lashley defeats Sami Zayn, Sasha Banks defeat Asuka. You have the Street Profits defeat the New Day. It was a great match. New Day puts the Street Profits over. I didn't think they would do that, but they did. You have Roman Reigns defeat Drew McIntyre. And you get the Women's Survivor Series match. Now, the final competitors in the ring were Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler, and Bianca Belair. Lana, she was outside of the ring, and she was told to stay out there only. Do not come in the ring. They didn't let her do anything. Shayna Baszler got disqualified. You had both Nia Jax and Bianca Belair counted out. This allowed Lana to become the sole survivor. So her and her team won Survivor Series. It's a smart decision. Some fans didn't like it, but I'm for it. Turns out Lana's smart. She is the sole survivor. Then we have The Undertaker. He did like his final farewell. Or so-called final farewell. And all these legends and part-timers out there. You know, Ric Flair, the Godwins, Rikishi, Big Show, Shawn Michaels, JBL. You had Kane, Shane McMahon, Kevin Nash there. You know, they were like clown car. They were like clowns coming out of the clown car. All these legend part-timers being brought to the stage, one after another after another. Then they did some type of Undertaker retrospective package. All of a sudden, the legend part-timers are gone. They just stood there in the ring for nothing. I don't know why they did that. I thought, you know, the Undertaker would come out and talk to them, thank them for service in the business, but that didn't happen. Then you have Vince come out, and he looked terrible. Like, he looked like the Undertaker. He would introduce the Undertaker, and the Undertaker would do his final farewell. He said that it's time for the Undertaker to rest in peace, blah, blah, blah. I didn't buy it. They do these fake retirement storylines every year. They've done it with Lesnar, they've done it with Kane, they've done it with Yokozuna, they've done it with Bray Wyatt, they've done it with Roman Reigns. Every year they always tease the Undertaker's retirement, and he never retires. I still think he's not going to retire. Even though the Undertaker said it is his time to rest in peace, Mark Calaway never said it's his time to retire. Undertaker, he's coming back for another match, whether you guys like it or not. I don't think he's retired. The man does not know when to quit. He has a good match, he thinks he can come back for more. He has a bad match, he feels like he has to redeem himself. That's the story that the documentary told. Survivor Series was all right. I just didn't like the whole Team Raw, Team SmackDown concept. Could have done Team Raw versus Team Retribution. Have Retribution go over. You could have had instead of Roman Reigns, Drew McIntyre could have had Roman Reigns and the Usos take on Team SmackDown. That's what you could have done there. Make the theme of the show survival, not Team Raw versus Team SmackDown. Like, that's bragging rights. They didn't really need to do that. Then we got the feuds between Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt. You know, this was pretty cool, like the inclusion of Alexa Bliss. Randy Orton going to the fun house. He would find out Bray Wyatt's weakness, and that was Alexa, and he would use Alexa to his advantage. And kind of humanizing Bray Wyatt here, but I'm fine with that. You know, Bray Wyatt is already buried, like I said. But this feud was pretty cool. They're kind of rehashing what they did at WrestleMania 33. Then you have a triple threat match. The winner would challenge Drew McIntyre at TLC. You had Keith Lee versus AJ Styles versus Matt Riddle. AJ wins. The feud of Drew McIntyre was alright. I like the inclusion of The Miz here. Kind of made things interesting with the Money in the Bank briefcase. Although there wasn't really much to Drew and AJ, but the feud was alright. We saw a relationship form between Drew McIntyre and Sheamus, which is cool to see. Either teasing a tag team between the two, or a feud at the Royal Rumble between the two. They were even building up the Miz here. They had Miz and Morrison beat Keith Lee. This was right after Vince told Keith Lee to go back to the PC because he's a terrible wrestler. This is not good for Keith Lee. He's lost to Braun Strowman. He's lost to Miz and Morrison. Majority of these matches end in disqualification. But at least he was a sole survivor at Survivor Series. That was good. He beat Orton. So far, Keith Lee's having a mixed bag career. Just take with us week by week. We'll see where he lies. It's Sasha Banks. Carmella. I didn't really care about this. I'm glad that Carmella's back, but they really should have built her up before thrusting her into a title match. We all know she's losing. Sasha Banks does need to win here. If she does lose to Carmella, I mean, that would not be good. Then you have Lana. She gets a series of victories over Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. I couldn't care for that. That was sad. A feud between Lana team up with Asuka. They feud with Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler over the women's tag team titles. I don't really care about this. Yeah, the Hurt Business come out. They would do but it wasn't really a feud. It was like a series of matches. Match by match series. I can't stand them. I hate them. It was just like the Street Profits versus Garza and Andrade. So they didn't really care much for it. Because all the matches will be nothing at the pay-per-view anyway. But you have tag team matches with one another. And like the Hurt Business when their first matches was alright. But then they knew they would win the rest of the tag team matches. And then you had the Hurt Business win singles competition. I didn't really care. Yet Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens, they did a feud towards TLC. This was okay. They didn't really have that much interest in it because they fought in the past at Roadblock 2016 and the Royal Rumble 2017. History with one another. But in this feud also kind of felt last minute. The problem with Roman Reigns' heel characters that they're rehashing old concepts that we've seen and they're recycling old feuds that we've seen. They're not really introducing new elements or creating new stars. Might do a separate video on reasons why I like Roman Reigns, reasons why I don't, and why this heel gimmick isn't as good as what people are saying that it is. We get the TLC. It's like a 6-man tag. Get Big E pinning Sami Zayn. Edge's team wins the match. Sasha Banks beats Carmella. Hurt Business beat the New Day. So they take the tag team titles off the New Day. It makes the New Day look like idiots. He had a series of matches going into the pay-per-view match. Instead of doing a series of matches, why don't you do like a month-long feud? Doing the match-by-match series makes you look like an idiot on the losing end. Why would you dare challenge the Hurt Business? Route number 42. Whatever. Then you have Charlotte Flair make her return. She replaces Lana. Lana was somehow written out of this tag team match, and Charlotte and Asuka would take the tag belts off of Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. And this told you that Sasha Banks and Bayley didn't need to win all the titles. All they did was get the championships back to people who have already been champions. Asuka's a double champion, women's champion, tag team champion, and give the other half of the championship to Charlotte Flair. Like she needs another title. Not only that, you've buried Shayna Baszler here. She was the one who tapped out the Charlotte Flair. She was also eliminated by Charlotte Flair from the Royal Rumble. Lost to Becky Lynch at WrestleMania, didn't make it to the roof of the Money in the Bank. She failed to win the Tri-Branded Battle Royal and have her lose to Lana, Dana Brooke, and Liv Morgan. Like they buried Shayna here. Now I knew she would fail, but I didn't predict the type of degree she would fail at. I didn't think she would fail this bad, but she did. We have Roman Reigns. He defeated Kevin Owens. You have Drew McIntyre and AJ Styles go out of the ladder matches. Was pretty good. You have Miz cash in the middle of the match. But this wasn't enough. Drew retains the title. Then you have Randy Orton versus The Fiend, an Inferno match. You would have The Fiend try to give Randy Orton the mandible claw, but Randy Orton shoves The Fiend into the fire. And The Fiend is burned. Orton wins. After the match, Orton gets The Fiend and RKO while on fire. And he gets a jug of gasoline, pours it on The Fiend, and lights him on fire. The Fiend is burned. Randy Orton wins. TSC, thought it was all right. First, giving my overall rating on this year. I would say this year gets a 5 out of 10. A 5 out of 10. Year sucked. Was best last year's because of the whole pandemic and what they were dealing with. But they could have done a whole lot better this year. But they didn't. They could have pushed some new superstars, but they just didn't do it. Not as bad as 2019, because 2019 had fans. They had people to listen to, but they just didn't. But this year, still bad. I'll give them some leniency because of the whole pandemic. First month was pretty good. The road to WrestleMania sucked. The build towards Backlash was all right. The build towards SummerSlam was all right. Now at the end of the year is kind of a mixed bag, but this year gets a 5 out of 10. We'll see what they do in 2021, but this has been your 2020 year in review.